The Frostborn Oath. Eowyn Aldrich had spent her life chasing winter, drawn to the cold in a way she couldn't explain. But when the first snowfall of the season came overnight thick, suffocating, unnatural, she knew something was wrong. The town of Hollow's End fell silent. The river froze solid. And then, through the snow, she saw him. A man standing in the storm, silver-eyed and waiting. "The winter took you from me once," he murmured, his breath curling in the icy air. "I won't let it happen again." Chapter 1. The Unnatural Chill of Hollow's End. The first tendrils of winter had always whispered secrets to Eowyn Aldrich, secrets she couldn't quite grasp, yet felt deep in her bones. For 57 years, she'd chased that feeling, moving from town to town, always seeking the place where the snow fell first and lingered longest. Hollow's End, nestled deep in a valley cradled by ancient, snow-capped mountains, had promised to be that place. The air, even in late autumn, held a perpetual crispness, a hint of the icy embrace to come. She'd bought the old Victorian on the edge of town, its peeling paint and overgrown garden somehow mirroring the quiet solitude she craved. But this was different. The snow hadn't whispered, it had roared. Eowyn woke to a world muffled and transformed. Not the gentle, picturesque snowfall she'd anticipated, but a blinding, suffocating blanket that seemed to press down on the very air. The silence was unnerving. No birdsong, no distant hum of traffic, not even the creak of the old house settling. Just the oppressive quiet of a world holding its breath. Stepping onto her porch, the cold bit through her thick woolen socks, a stark contrast to the comforting weight of the hand-knitted shawl around her shoulders. The snow reached past her ankles, drifts already forming against the porch railing. It was the kind of snow that swallowed sound, that made the familiar landscape alien and forbidding. The air itself felt heavy, charged with an energy that prickled her skin. Eowyn, a woman built for comfort rather than speed, had the sturdy frame of someone who enjoyed long walks and hearty meals. Her hair, once the color of ripe wheat, was now streaked with silver, pulled back in a practical braid. Lines etched around her kind, hazel eyes spoke of laughter and sorrow, of a life lived fully, if not always easily. Her hands, rough from years of gardening and pottery, trembled slightly as she reached out to touch a snow-laden branch. The ice crystals clung to her glove, intricate and beautiful, yet menacing in their sheer abundance. The river. That was her first thought. The Hollow's End River, the lifeblood of the town, usually a rushing torrent even in the coldest months. She had to see it. Pulling on her heavy boots and a thick, fur-lined coat, Eowyn trudged through the snow, each step a laborious effort. The town, usually bustling with early morning activity, was deserted. Windows were dark, curtains drawn. An eerie stillness hung in the air, broken only by the crunch of her boots on the pristine snow. As she neared the riverbank, a growing sense of dread coiled in her stomach. The sight that greeted her stole her breath. The river, usually a churning ribbon of gray-blue, was frozen solid. Not just a thin layer of ice, but a thick, opaque sheet that stretched from bank to bank, reflecting the pale, diffused light like a mirror. It looked unnatural, as if time itself had stopped. She reached the edge, her heart pounding a heavy rhythm against her ribs. The silence was absolute, broken only by the faint whisper of the wind through the snow-laden branches of the ancient pines that lined the riverbank. It was then that she saw him. He stood on the opposite bank, a figure seemingly sculpted from the storm itself. Tall and imposing, he was a silhouette against the swirling snow, yet she could make out the sharp angles of his face, the way the wind whipped his dark hair around his head. He wasn't wearing a coat, seemingly impervious to the biting cold. And his eyes, even from this distance, she could see them. Silver. Like polished moonlight, they held a depth of intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. He didn't move, didn't speak. He simply stood there, watching her, a silent sentinel in the frozen landscape. A primal fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Eowyn's initial shock. It was a fear she hadn't felt since she couldn't remember. It was a fear rooted deep in her instincts, a warning that resonated with the unnatural stillness of the town, the frozen river, the suffocating snow. He took a step, and the ice beneath his feet didn't crack. Another step. He was walking on the frozen river, his movements fluid and graceful, like a predator stalking its prey. Yoan wanted to run, to turn and flee back to the relative safety of her old house, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. She was mesmerized, trapped between terror and a strange, inexplicable pull. As he drew closer, she could see more details. His face was lean and angular, etched with a weariness that belied his apparent strength. His jaw was firm, his lips pressed into a thin line. His clothes, though simple dark trousers and a heavy, gray tunic, seemed to be made of a material that shimmered faintly in the weak light. But it was his eyes that held her captive. They were the color of winter twilight, of glacial ice, and they held a depth of emotion that she couldn't decipher, a mixture of sorrow, determination, and something else, something that made her heart ache with a longing she didn't understand. He stopped a few feet away, the frozen river separating them like a chasm. The wind howled around them, whipping snowflakes into a frenzy, but he seemed untouched by the storm. He was the eye of the storm, the calm center of the swirling chaos. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and resonant, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate in the very air around them. It was a voice that spoke of ancient forests and windswept plains, of a world far removed from the quiet, predictable life she had known. "The winter took you from me once," he murmured, his breath curling in the icy air, forming fleeting, ghostly shapes. "I won't let it happen again." His words made no sense, yet they resonated deep within her, stirring something ancient and dormant. A memory? A feeling? She didn't know. But the fear that had gripped her moments before began to recede, replaced by a wave of confusion and recognition. It was impossible. She had never seen this man before in her life. Yet, his eyes, those silver eyes, seemed to hold a story she somehow knew, a story etched in ice and snow and whispered on the wind. The unnatural chill that had settled over Hollow's End suddenly felt personal, directed, a consequence of something vast and unknown, and she, inexplicably, was at the center of it. What had she done? Chapter 2. Silver eyes in the swirling snow. The snow continued its relentless descent, each flake a tiny, icy dagger in the wind. Eowyn stood rooted to the riverbank, her gaze locked with the silver-eyed strangers. His words, "The winter took you from me once," echoed in her mind, a nonsensical phrase that nonetheless stirred a profound, unsettling feeling within her. It was as if a forgotten melody had suddenly surfaced from the depths of her memory, a tune she couldn't quite place, but felt intimately familiar. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to ward off the bone-chilling cold, but the icy air seemed to penetrate her very soul. It wasn't just the physical cold, it was a deeper chill, a sense of foreboding that settled heavily in her chest. She wanted to speak, to demand an explanation, but her throat was constricted, her voice trapped. The man remained motionless, his silver eyes unwavering. He was a study in contrasts, his powerful presence against the delicate dance of the snowflakes, his stillness against the fury of the storm, the ancient sorrow in his eyes against the youthful strength in his stance. He looked to be in his late 30s, perhaps, but there was an ageless quality about him, a sense of timelessness that made it impossible to truly gauge his age. Finally, Eowyn found her voice, though it was barely a whisper, carried away by the wind. I don't understand. Who are you?" He tilted his head slightly, a subtle movement that nonetheless conveyed a depth of consideration. The wind whipped his dark hair around his face, momentarily obscuring his features, before settling again, revealing the sharp lines of his jaw and the intensity of his gaze. "You do not remember," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the frozen river between them. It wasn't a question, but a statement, heavy with a weariness that seemed to stretch back centuries. "But you will. Remember what?" Eowyn pressed, her voice gaining a little strength, fueled by a mixture of fear and frustration. "I've never seen you before in my life. I don't know what you're talking about." He took a step closer, the ice groaning faintly beneath his weight, a sound that sent a shiver down Eowyn's spine. He stopped at the very edge of the frozen river, the narrow gap between them a tangible representation of the chasm of understanding that separated them. Hollow's End is not what it seems, Eowyn Aldrich, he said, his voice laced with a subtle urgency. This snow this cold, it is not natural. It is a sign. A sign of what? He hesitated, his gaze sweeping across the frozen landscape, taking in the snow-covered houses, the silent trees, the unnatural stillness of the town. He looked back at her, his silver eyes searching, probing. A sign that the past is returning, he said finally, and that some oaths, some bonds are unbreakable, even by death. Eowyn shivered, and not just from the cold. His words were cryptic, unsettling, yet they resonated with a strange familiarity, a feeling she couldn't explain. She thought of her lifelong fascination with winter, the inexplicable pull she felt towards the cold, the recurring dreams she'd had for years, dreams of snow-covered landscapes, of a figure shrouded in shadow, of a voice whispering her name. Could this stranger be connected to those dreams? To that feeling of longing? I still don't understand, she said, her voice shaking slightly. What do you want from me? His expression softened, a flicker of warmth crossing his otherwise stoic features. He reached out a hand, as if to touch her, but stopped just short of making contact, his fingers hovering in the air between them. The gesture was both tentative and protective, a silent offering of comfort that surprised her. I want to protect you, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. From what is to come. From what I failed to protect you from before. His words sent a fresh wave of confusion and fear through her. Protect her from what? And what did he mean by before? Was he suggesting they had met in a past life? The thought was absurd, preposterous, yet the intensity of his gaze, the conviction in his voice, made her question her own certainty. She took a step back, instinctively putting more distance between them. I don't need your protection. I can take care of myself. A flicker of amusement, quickly masked, crossed his face. Can you, Eowyn? Can you truly face what is coming alone? He gestured towards the town, towards the unnatural snow, the frozen river, the oppressive silence. This is only the beginning. The winter's grasp is tightening. And you are the key. The key to what? Eowyn demanded, her voice rising in frustration. Please, just tell me what's going on. He sighed, a sound of profound weariness. It is a long story, Eowyn. A story of ancient oaths, of forbidden love, of a curse that has spanned centuries. A story that is intertwined with your own, whether you remember it or not. He paused, his silver eyes holding hers captive. But for now, he said, his voice dropping to a low, urgent murmur, you need to trust me. Trust the feeling in your heart, the echo of a memory you can't quite grasp. Because your life, and perhaps the fate of Hollow's End, depends on it. He turned to leave, his figure melting back into the swirling snow. Eowyn wanted to call out to him, to demand that he stay and explain, but the words caught in her throat. She watched as he disappeared into the white curtain of the storm, leaving her alone on the frozen riverbank, the silence of Hollow's End pressing down on her like a physical weight. Trust him? How could she trust a stranger who spoke in riddles, who claimed to know her from a past she couldn't remember? Yet, as she looked out at the frozen landscape, at the unnatural snow, at the spot where he had stood, she couldn't deny the unsettling feeling that he was telling the truth. And that her life, as she knew it, was about to change forever. The snow seemed to whisper his unspoken name, a chilling breeze against her cheek. Chapter 3. Whispers of a Lost Winter's Bride. The walk back to her house felt longer, the snow deeper, the silence more profound. Every creak of the old Victorian, every rustle of the wind through the snow-laden branches, sounded like a whispered warning. Eowyn huddled by the fireplace, the flames struggling to chase away the unnatural chill that had settled in her bones. The stranger's words, "The winter took you from me once," replayed in her mind, a haunting refrain that refused to be silenced. She tried to dismiss it all as a bizarre dream, a hallucination brought on by the sudden, intense cold. But the memory of his silver eyes, the intensity of his gaze, the strange sense of familiarity he evoked, were too vivid to ignore. And the frozen river, that was undeniable proof that something was terribly wrong in Hollow's End. Eowyn had always been a practical woman, grounded in reality. She believed in what she could see, what she could touch, what she could understand. Yet this defied all logic, all reason. It felt like she'd stepped into a forgotten fairy tale, a world where ancient curses and unbreakable oaths held sway. She made herself a cup of strong, black tea, the warmth spreading through her chilled fingers. She needed to think, to make sense of what had happened. But her thoughts kept circling back to the stranger, to his cryptic warnings, to the unsettling feeling that her life was somehow intertwined with his. She remembered the box, the one she'd found tucked away in the attic when she'd first moved into the house. It was a small wooden chest, intricately carved with images of snowflakes and wolves. She dismissed it as a quaint antique, a relic of a previous owner, and had put it back in the attic, intending to sort through it later. Now, a sudden urge, a feeling she couldn't ignore, compelled her to retrieve it. The attic was cold and dusty, the air thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. The only light came from the small, snow-covered window, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. Eowyn found the box tucked away in a corner, beneath a pile of old quilts. It was heavier than she remembered, the wood smooth and cool beneath her fingers. She carried it back down to the living room, placing it carefully on the coffee table in front of the fireplace. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were several objects, a silver ring, intricately engraved with a wolf's head, a dried, pressed flower, its petals brittle and fragile, a small, leather-bound journal, and a lock of hair, the color of spun gold, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Eowyn picked up the ring, turning it over in her fingers. The wolf's head seemed to stare back at her, its eyes gleaming faintly in the firelight. It felt strangely familiar, as if she'd worn it before. She slipped it onto her finger, and a jolt of energy, like a static shock, ran through her. The ring fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Next, she picked up the dried flower. It was a snowdrop, its delicate petals remarkably preserved. She recognized it instantly. It was the same flower that grew wild along the banks of the Hollow's End River, the first flower to bloom each spring, pushing its way through the melting snow. A wave of sadness washed over her, a feeling of loss she couldn't explain. The journal was the most intriguing item. Its pages were yellowed and brittle, the ink faded in places. Eowyn carefully opened it, her heart pounding in her chest. The first page was dated over 200 years ago, and the handwriting was elegant and flowing, clearly the work of a woman. "The snow falls heavy tonight," the first entry read. "And my heart is heavier still. He is gone, taken by the winter's embrace. But I know he will return. Our oath is unbreakable, our love eternal." Eowyn's breath caught in her throat. The words echoed the stranger's words, the sentiment strangely familiar. She continued reading, her eyes scanning the faded ink, devouring the words as if they held the key to unlocking a hidden truth. The journal entries chronicled a love story, a passionate, forbidden romance between a young woman named Isolde and a man named... She scanned the pages, searching for his name, Callan. Isolde described Callan as a man of the mountains, a protector of the valley, a warrior with eyes the color of glacial ice. He was a werewolf, bound to the winter, to the cycles of the moon, to the ancient magic of the land. Eowyn gasped, dropping the journal onto the table. A werewolf. It was absurd, impossible. Yet, the words on the page felt real, authentic, imbued with a raw emotion that transcended time. She picked up the journal again, her hand shaking, and continued reading. Isolde wrote of their secret meetings, of their shared passion, of their unwavering love in the face of opposition from her family, from the town, from those who feared Callan's power. She wrote of an ancient curse, a pact made with the winter spirit to protect Hollow's End, a pact that demanded a sacrifice, a winter's bride, a woman chosen to be bound to the spirit to ensure the valley's survival.
Isolde was that bride.
But she chose love over duty, defying the curse, choosing to be with Kaelin instead. And the winter spirit, enraged by her defiance, took its revenge. It unleashed a terrible storm, a blizzard that buried Hollow's End in snow, that froze the river solid, that claimed Kaelin's life, leaving Isolde heartbroken and alone. The last entry in the journal was a desperate plea, a vow. "I will find you, my love," Isolde wrote, "even if it takes lifetimes. Our oath is unbroken. Our love will endure. I will wait for you, in the heart of winter, until the snow melts and we are reunited once more." Theowen closed the journal, her mind reeling. The story, it was eerily similar to what the stranger had told her. Could she be Isolde? Reincarnated? It was a preposterous notion, yet the evidence was mounting. The ring, the flower, the journal, the stranger's words, the unnatural winter that had descended upon Hollow's End. And the lock of hair, she gingerly picked it up, the golden strands shimmering in the firelight. It was a perfect match to her own. Only the silver that now streaked her hair differentiated the locks. A sudden, sharp knock on the door startled her. She jumped, her heart pounding in her chest. Who could be out in this weather? She hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob. Fear warred with curiosity, with a growing sense of inevitability. She knew, somehow, who was on the other side of that door. The snow outside seemed to hush, holding its breath, awaiting her decision. The reflection from her silver ring caught, almost haunting her. Chapter 4. The Frozen River's Silent Testimony. Theowen took a deep breath, steeling herself. The knock came again, more insistent this time, a rhythmic pounding that echoed the frantic beat of her heart. She opened the door, the wind whipping snowflakes into the warm interior, a stark contrast to the unsettling calm that had permeated the house moments before. He stood there, framed by the swirling snow, his silver eyes even more striking against the backdrop of the white landscape. Kaelin. The name came unbidden to her mind, a whisper from the past, a truth she was slowly beginning to accept. He was taller than she remembered, his presence filling the doorway, radiating an aura of power and vulnerability. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly, a hint of uncertainty in his tone. It was a surprising question, considering the circumstances, the history that seemingly bound them together. Theowen hesitated for a moment, her mind racing. Trust him, he had said. But could she? Could she trust this man who claimed to know her from a past life, who spoke of ancient curses and werewolves? Yet, looking into his eyes, seeing the flicker of genuine concern, the weariness that seemed to stretch back centuries, she found herself nodding. He stepped inside, bringing with him the scent of pine and snow and something else, something wild and untamed, that stirred a primal instinct within her. He carefully closed the door behind him, shutting out the storm, creating a sense of intimacy, of enclosure, that was both comforting and unsettling. "You read the journal," he said, his gaze falling on the wooden box on the coffee table, the open journal lying beside it. It wasn't a question, but a statement, a confirmation of what he already knew. Theowen nodded, her throat tight. Isolde, was she me? He met her gaze, his silver eyes searching, probing. "Yes," he said simply. "And I was Kaelin." The confirmation, though expected, still sent a shiver down her spine. It was one thing to read about it in an ancient journal, another to hear it spoken aloud, to have it confirmed by the man who claimed to be her lover from a past life. But how is that possible? Theowen asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Reincarnation, it's just a story, isn't it?" Kaelin walked over to the fireplace, holding his hands out to the flames, as if seeking warmth, though she suspected he didn't feel the cold the way she did. "Some stories," he said, his voice low and thoughtful, "are more than just stories. They are echoes of truth, whispers of the past, carried on the wind, woven into the fabric of time." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "The bond between us, Theowen, it is strong. It has endured for centuries, defying death, defying the winter spirit's curse. It is a soul bond, forged in love, sealed by an oath. The Frostborn Oath, Eowyn murmured, the words feeling strangely familiar on her tongue. She remembered the inscription on the inside of the silver ring, now nestled on her finger. Frostborn, forever bound. Kaelin nodded. We swore to protect Hollow's End, to be its guardians, to stand against the darkness. But we also swore to love each other, to be together, always. And the curse? Eowyn asked, her voice trembling slightly. Isolde defied the winter spirit, chose you instead of becoming its bride. Yes, Kaelin said, his voice heavy with sorrow. And the winter spirit took its revenge. It claimed my life, believing it had broken our bond, ended our love. But it underestimated the strength of our oath, the power of our connection. He walked over to the window, looking out at the swirling snow, at the frozen landscape. The winter spirit is stirring again, Eowyn. It senses your return, our reunion. And it is angry. This snow this cold, it is a warning. A prelude to what is to come. Eowyn joined him at the window, her gaze following his. The snow was falling even harder now, obscuring the houses across the street, creating a world of white, a world of silence. It felt oppressive, suffocating, as if the very air was closing in on them. What do we do? She asked, her voice filled with a growing sense of dread. He turned to her, his silver eyes filled with a fierce determination. We fight, he said. We break the curse. We reclaim our love, our lives, our future. We protect Hollow's End, as we swore to do, centuries ago. He reached out and took her hand, his touch sending a jolt of warmth through her chilled fingers. His grip was strong, reassuring, yet she could feel a subtle tremor in his hand, a hint of the vulnerability he tried to conceal. But this time, he said, his voice low and intense, we do it together. We face the winter spirit, not as Isolde and Kaelin, but as Eowyn and the man you are now. We rewrite the ending to our story. Looking into his eyes, seeing the unwavering belief, the fierce love, the silent plea for her trust, Eowyn found herself believing him. Believing in the impossible, in the power of a love that had transcended time, in the strength of an oath that had endured for centuries. She squeezed his hand, a silent promise, a silent acceptance of her destiny. Together, she whispered, her voice firm, resolute. The frozen river, visible through the snow-covered window, seemed to glint faintly, a silent witness to their renewed vow. The wind howled outside, a mournful cry that echoed the winter spirit's rage, but within the small, warm room, a spark of hope had been ignited, a spark of defiance, a spark of a love that refused to be extinguished. The silence of the house was broken only by the steady crackle of the fire and the now synchronized rhythm of their breathing. Chapter 5. Echoes in the Abandoned Mill. The following day dawned, if it could be called a dawning, with the same oppressive whiteness. The snow hadn't ceased, if anything, it had intensified, creating a landscape of surreal beauty and chilling isolation. Hollow's End remained silent, entombed in its icy prison. Kaelin had stayed the night, sleeping on the worn sofa in front of the fireplace, a silent guardian watching over Eowyn as she slept fitfully, her dreams filled with fragmented images of snow-covered landscapes, a wolf's howl, and a pair of silver eyes. He was already awake when she came downstairs, dressed in the same clothes he'd worn the day before, seemingly unaffected by the lack of sleep or the persistent cold. He had a fire going, the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls, and the aroma of coffee filled the air. It was a strangely domestic scene, considering the circumstances, a reminder of the life she had once known, before the world had turned upside down. You should eat, he said, his voice a low rumble, as he handed her a mug of coffee and a plate of toasted bread with a thin spread of jam. It was simple fare, but it was welcome, a comforting normalcy in the midst of the surreal. They ate in silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the muffled roar of the wind outside. Eowyn found herself studying him, trying to reconcile the image of the ancient warrior from Isolde's journal with the man sitting across from her. He was undeniably handsome, his features strong and defined, his silver eyes holding a depth of wisdom and sorrow that belied his apparent age. But there was also a gentleness about him, a vulnerability that she found both intriguing and endearing. "Where do we start?" Owen asked, breaking the silence. "How do we break the curse?" Kalen set down his mug, his gaze meeting hers. "The journal mentioned an old mill," he said, "just outside of town, on the edge of the Whispering Pines. It was a place of power, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. Isolde believed it was where the curse was first enacted, where the winter spirit made its pact." "And you think?" "I think it's a good place to start," Kalen said. "If we can understand the origins of the curse, perhaps we can find a way to break it." The thought of venturing out into the blizzard was daunting, but Eowyn knew they had no choice. They couldn't stay holed up in her house, waiting for the winter spirit to make its next move. They had to be proactive, to take the fight to it. They bundled up in layers of warm clothing, Eowyn pulling on her fur-lined coat and hat, Kalen seemingly impervious to the cold, needing only a thick scarf wrapped around his neck. As they stepped outside, the wind hit them like a physical force, whipping snowflakes into their faces, making it difficult to see. The journey to the mill was arduous, the snow deep and treacherous, the wind relentless. They walked in silence, their breath forming ghostly plumes in the icy air, the only sound the crunch of their boots on the snow and the mournful howl of the wind through the trees. The Whispering Pines, a dense forest of ancient evergreens, loomed before them, a dark, imposing presence against the white landscape. The trees were so thick that they blocked out most of the light, creating a twilight gloom even in the middle of the day. The wind whispered through the branches, a constant, eerie murmur that gave the forest its name. The mill itself was a dilapidated structure, its wooden timbers rotting and crumbling, its roof partially collapsed. It stood on the edge of a frozen stream, a tributary of the Hollow's End River, its water wheel frozen solid, encased in ice. It was a place of forgotten memories, of faded grandeur, of lingering sadness. As they approached the mill, Eowyn felt a strange energy emanating from it, a tingling sensation that prickled her skin. It was a mixture of power and sorrow, a sense of ancient magic and profound loss. Kalen stopped at the entrance, his hand resting on the crumbling wooden door. "Be careful, Eowyn," he said, his voice low and cautious. "This place, it holds echoes of the past. And not all of them are friendly." He pushed open the door, the hinges groaning in protest, and they stepped inside. The interior of the mill was dark and dusty, the air thick with the scent of decay and damp earth. The only light came from the holes in the roof and the cracks in the walls, casting eerie shadows across the room. The remnants of old machinery lay scattered about, rusted and broken, silent witnesses to a bygone era. Eowyn felt a presence, a sense of being watched, of being surrounded by unseen eyes. She shivered, and not just from the cold. Isolde, Kalen whispered, his voice echoing in the stillness. "Can you feel her?" Eowyn closed her eyes, focusing on the energy that permeated the mill. She could feel it, a faint whisper of sadness, of longing, of a love that had been cruelly cut short. It was Isolde, her presence lingering in this place, trapped between worlds, waiting suddenly. A cold gust of wind swept through the mill, extinguishing the flickering light from the doorway, plunging them into near darkness. Eowyn gasped, her hand reaching for Kalen's. She felt his strong grip close around hers, a reassuring anchor in the darkness. Then they heard it, a whisper, faint at first, then growing louder, carried on the wind. It was a woman's voice, filled with sorrow and rage. "Kalen," the voice whispered, "you have returned, but it is too late. The oath is broken. The winter spirit claims its due." The temperature in the mill plummeted, the air turning icy cold. Eowyn could see her breath forming ghostly plumes in front of her. She felt a presence, a powerful, malevolent force, drawing closer. The voice was all around, inside her head, a bone-chilling hum. "Phone," Kalen said, his voice urgent. We need to leave.
Now.
He pulled her towards the door, but it was too late. The entrance was blocked by a swirling vortex of snow and ice, a miniature blizzard that had formed within the mill itself. They were trapped. The wind howled around them, a deafening roar, and the voice of the winter spirit echoed through the mill, filled with triumph and rage. You cannot escape, the voice hissed. The bride will be mine. The curse will be fulfilled. A flicker, like lightning, sparked from the center of the vortex, and Eowyn had only a moment to register the danger before Kaelin pushed her forcefully behind him, shielding her with his own body. Chapter 6. A touch that burns like ice. The force of the blast, a concentrated burst of ice and wind, threw Kaelin against the far wall of the mill. He hit with a sickening thud, his body slumping to the ground, a groan escaping his lips. Eowyn cried out his name, scrambling to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. The swirling vortex of snow and ice that blocked the entrance began to dissipate, revealing the source of the attack. It was a figure formed of pure ice, shimmering and translucent, its features shifting and indistinct, yet undeniably human-like. Its eyes, 2 points of glacial blue, burned with a cold, malevolent light. This was the winter spirit, the entity that had haunted Isolde's journal, the force that had claimed Kaelin's life centuries ago. Foolish mortal, the winter spirit hissed, its voice a chilling rasp that echoed through the mill. You cannot defy destiny. The bride is mine. The oath will be fulfilled. Eowyn, despite her fear, felt a surge of anger, a fierce protectiveness towards Kaelin, towards the love that had been stolen from them. She stepped forward, placing herself between the winter spirit and Kaelin's unconscious form. She is not yours, Eowyn said, her voice trembling but firm. I am not Isolde. I am Eowyn, and I will not be your bride. The winter spirit laughed, a chilling, high-pitched sound that made the air vibrate. You are her, reborn. The oath binds you, whether you acknowledge it or not. You cannot escape your fate. It raised a hand, its icy fingers elongated and sharp, and another blast of frozen energy shot towards Eowyn. She braced herself, expecting the impact, but it never came. A low growl, filled with primal rage, echoed through the mill. Kaelin, his eyes now glowing a vibrant, lupin silver, had risen to his feet. He was shifting, his body transforming, his clothes tearing as his muscles expanded, his bones reshaping themselves. He was becoming the wolf, the creature of ancient power that Isolde had described in her journal. He lunged at the winter spirit, a blur of motion, his fangs bared, his claws extended. The two figures clashed, a whirlwind of ice and fur, of ancient magic and primal fury. The mill shook with the force of their battle, the timbers groaning, the machinery rattling. Eowyn watched in awe and terror, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never witnessed anything like this, a battle between a werewolf and a being of pure ice. It was a scene straight out of a myth, a legend come to life. But she couldn't just stand there and watch. She had to do something to help Kaelin. She remembered the silver ring, the one she'd found in Isolde's box, the one that had felt strangely familiar, that had jolted her with a surge of energy when she'd first put it on. It was a symbol of their bond, of their oath. Perhaps it held some power, some protection. She focused on the ring, channeling all her energy, all her love, all her hope into it. She felt a warmth spreading from the ring, through her hand, up her arm, throughout her entire body. It was a comforting warmth, a protective shield, that pushed back against the winter spirit's icy grip. The winter spirit, distracted by Eowyn's burgeoning power, faltered for a moment, its icy form flickering. Kaelin seized the opportunity, sinking his fangs into the spirit's arm. The spirit shrieked, a sound of pain and rage, and its icy form began to crack, to splinter. Eowyn, emboldened by Kaelin's attack, reached out towards the winter spirit, her hand glowing with the warmth emanating from the ring. She touched its icy form, and a jolt of energy, like a lightning strike, passed between them. The winter spirit recoiled, its form dissolving, its voice fading into a whisper. "No, this cannot be the oath. It is broken." The mill fell silent. The only sounds the ragged breathing of Kalen, who was slowly shifting back into his human form, and the crackling of the remaining ice as it began to melt. Eowyn rushed to Kalen's side, her heart filled with relief. He was bruised and battered, but he was alive. He looked up at her, his silver eyes, now back to their normal hue, filled with a mixture of gratitude and love. "You saved me," he said, his voice hoarse. "We saved each other," Eowyn corrected, helping him to his feet. He leaned on her for support, his body still weak from the transformation, from the battle. They stood there for a moment, embracing, drawing strength from each other, the silence of the mill a stark contrast to the chaos that had just transpired. The touch that had burned like ice, the touch of the winter spirit, had left a mark on Eowyn's hand, a small, frost-like pattern on her skin. But it didn't hurt. In fact, it felt strangely warm, a reminder of the power she had discovered within herself, the power of the oath, the power of their love. She looked at it and then to Kalen, a slight smile touching her lips. He returned her smile with one of his own, relief mixed with the promise of what had been rekindled. The mill seemed to sigh with their shared breath. Chapter 7. The Mark of the Winter Wolf. The journey back from the mill was slow and painful. Kalen, though recovering, was still weak from his transformation and the battle with the winter spirit. Eowyn supported him, her arm around his waist, his arm draped over her shoulders, their steps synchronized, a silent testament to their growing bond. The blizzard had finally begun to subside, the relentless snowfall giving way to a gentle flurry, the wind dying down to a whisper. The landscape, though still blanketed in white, seemed less menacing, less oppressive. The silence of Hollow's End, however, remained, a constant reminder of the unnatural forces at play. As they reached Eowyn's house, the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a pale, ethereal glow on the snow-covered landscape. It was a beautiful sight, a promise of hope, a sign that the winter's grip might finally be loosening. Inside the house, Eowyn helped Kalen to the sofa, building up the fire, bringing him blankets and a cup of hot tea. He looked exhausted, his face pale and drawn, his body bruised and battered. But his silver eyes, though weary, held a spark of resilience, a determination that refused to be extinguished. "Thank you, Eowyn," he said, his voice hoarse. "For everything." "You don't need to thank me," Eowyn said, sitting beside him, taking his hand in hers. "We're in this together, remember?" He squeezed her hand, a silent acknowledgement of their partnership, of their shared destiny. Eowyn noticed the mark on her hand again, the frost-like pattern left by the winter spirit's touch. It was more distinct now, the intricate design resembling a wolf's paw, surrounded by delicate snowflakes. It was a beautiful, yet unsettling, reminder of the power she had wielded, the connection she had forged with the ancient magic of Hollow's End. "What is it?" Kalen asked, noticing her gaze. She showed him her hand, tracing the outline of the mark with her finger. The winter spirit had left this. Kalen examined it closely, his brow furrowed in concentration. He gently touched the mark, his fingers tracing the outline of the wolf's paw. A jolt of energy, like a static shock, passed between them, a familiar sensation that sent a shiver down Eowyn's spine. "It's a mark of the winter wolf," he said, his voice filled with awe. "A sign of your connection to the ancient power, to the spirit of Hollow's End." "But what does it mean?" Eowyn asked, her voice filled with confusion. "It means you are more powerful than you realize, Eowyn," Kalen said. "You have awakened the dormant magic within you, the magic of Isolde, the magic of the winter wolf. It is a gift, but also a responsibility." A responsibility. The weight of those words settled heavily on Eowyn's shoulders. She had never considered herself to be powerful, to be capable of wielding magic. She was just an ordinary woman, a potter, a gardener, a lover of winter. Yet, here she was, marked by an ancient spirit, connected to a werewolf, destined to fight a centuries-old curse. "I don't know if I can do this, Kalen," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a sold. He cupped her face in his hands, his silver eyes searching hers. You are Yoan, he said, his voice firm, reassuring.
And that is enough.
You are strong. You are resilient. You are compassionate. You have the heart of a wolf, the spirit of winter.
And you have me.
We will face this together, as we promised. His words, his touch, his unwavering belief in her, gave her strength, gave her courage. She leaned into his embrace, drawing comfort from his presence, from the warmth of his body, from the steady beat of his heart. What do we do now? She asked, her voice muffled against his chest. We learn, Kaelin said. We learn more about the curse, about the winter spirit, about your power. We need to understand how to defeat it, how to break the cycle of violence and sorrow. He pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes.
There's an old woman, he said.
She lives on the outskirts of town, in a small cabin near the Whispering Pines. Her name is Alara. She's a keeper of secrets, a weaver of tales. She knows the history of Hollow's End, the stories of the old ways. She might be able to help us. Then we go to her, Eowyn said, her voice firm, resolute. We find her, and we ask for her help. The mark of the winter wolf on her hand seemed to pulse with a faint warmth, a silent affirmation of her decision, a symbol of her growing power, of her acceptance of her destiny. The setting sun cast long shadows through the window, the last remnants of the blizzard swirling outside, but within the small house, a sense of purpose had been forged, a determination to fight for their love, for their future, for the fate of Hollow's End. The quiet between them was no longer of uncertainty, but of preparation. Chapter 8. Fragments of a Forgotten Past. The journey to Alara's cabin was less arduous than their trek to the mill, the blizzard having subsided, leaving behind a landscape transformed by a pristine blanket of snow. The sun, though low on the horizon, cast a warm, golden glow on the snow-covered trees, creating a scene of breathtaking beauty. Kaelin, though still recovering, seemed to have regained some of his strength, his stride more confident, his posture straighter. He walked beside Eowyn, their hands occasionally brushing, a silent connection that spoke volumes. As they neared the Whispering Pines, Eowyn felt a familiar tingling sensation, a sense of ancient power emanating from the forest. It was a different feeling than the oppressive energy she'd felt at the mill, less menacing, more welcoming. Alara's cabin was nestled deep within the trees, a small, rustic structure made of logs and stone, smoke curling from its chimney, a beacon of warmth in the frozen landscape. It looked like something out of a fairy tale, a place where time stood still, where ancient secrets were whispered on the wind. Kaelin knocked on the wooden door, the sound echoing in the stillness. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a woman who looked as ancient as the trees themselves. Alara was small and frail, her face a roadmap of wrinkles. Her eyes, though faded with age, held a spark of wisdom, a depth of knowledge that transcended time. She wore a simple, homespun dress, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, a silver pendant, shaped like a wolf's head, hanging around her neck. It was strikingly similar to Eowyn's ring. Kaelin, she said, her voice raspy but strong. It has been a long time. Alara, Kaelin said, bowing his head slightly in respect. We need your help. Alara's gaze shifted to Eowyn, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if she were peering into her very soul. She studied her for a moment, her expression unreadable, before a flicker of recognition, of understanding, crossed her face. The winter's bride, she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Reborn. She stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. The interior of the cabin was warm and cozy, the air filled with the scent of wood smoke and herbs. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls, illuminating shelves filled with books, jars of dried herbs, and strange, unidentifiable objects. It was a place of magic, of mystery, of ancient wisdom. Alara motioned for them to sit at a small, wooden table near the fire. She poured them each a cup of steaming tea, its aroma fragrant and soothing. Tell me, she said, her voice low and steady. "What brings you to my door?" Kaelin and Eowyn recounted their story, telling Alara about the unnatural winter, the frozen river, the encounter with the winter spirit, the journal, the mark on Eowyn's hand. Alara listened intently, her eyes never leaving their faces, her expression unchanging. When they had finished, she remained silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the flames dancing in the hearth. Then she spoke, her voice filled with a profound sadness. "The curse of the winter spirit," she said, "is a tragedy that has haunted Hollow's End for centuries. It is a story of love and loss, of betrayal and sacrifice, of a pact made in desperation, broken in defiance." She told them the full story, the details that Isolde's journal had only hinted at. The winter spirit, she explained, was not inherently evil. It was a force of nature, a guardian of the valley, a protector of the balance between winter and spring. But it was also a lonely, isolated being craving connection, craving love. Centuries ago, the people of Hollow's End, facing a harsh and unforgiving winter, had made a pact with the winter spirit. They promised to offer it a bride, a woman chosen from the village, to be its companion, to share its power, to ensure the valley's survival. In return, the winter spirit would protect them from the worst of the winter's wrath, providing them with bountiful harvests and mild seasons. Isolde, a young woman of extraordinary beauty and spirit, had been chosen as the winter spirit's bride. But she had fallen in love with Kaelin, a werewolf, a protector of the forest, a man who embodied the wild, untamed spirit of nature. Their love was forbidden, a violation of the pact, a threat to the balance of power. But they defied the elders, defied the winter spirit, choosing to be together, to follow their hearts. The winter spirit, enraged by their defiance, unleashed its fury, claiming Kaelin's life, leaving Isolde heartbroken and alone. But Isolde, in her grief, had made her own vow, a promise to find Kaelin, to be reunited with him, even if it took lifetimes. And now, Alara said, her gaze meeting Eowyn's, "You are here. The cycle has begun anew. The winter spirit seeks to claim what it believes is rightfully its. But the oath, the Frostborn Oath, it is more than just a pact with the winter spirit. It is a bond between two souls, a love that transcends time, a power that can break the curse." "But how?" Eowyn asked, her voice filled with a desperate hope. "How do we break it?" Alara smiled, a faint, knowing smile. "The answer, my dear," she said, "lies within you. Within the mark of the winter wolf, within the power of your love, within the fragments of a forgotten past." She reached into a drawer, pulling out a small, leather-bound book. Its pages were yellowed and brittle, the ink faded in places. It looked even older than Isolde's journal. "This," Alara said, "is the Book of Shadows. It contains the ancient knowledge, the secrets of the old ways, the rituals and spells that can harness the power of nature, the power of the winter wolf." She handed the book to Eowyn. "Study it," she said. "Learn from it. It will guide you. It will show you the way." Eowyn took the book, her hands trembling slightly. It felt heavy, imbued with a sense of ancient power, of profound responsibility. As her fingers brushed against the cover of the book, a vivid image flashed through her mind. A snow-covered clearing, a circle of standing stones, a full moon casting an ethereal glow. It was a fleeting vision, a fragment of a forgotten memory, but it felt significant, important. It was a premonition of what was necessary, and the image lingered after her eyes adjusted back to the dimly lit cabin. Chapter 9. The Council of Shadows and Secrets. The Book of Shadows was a revelation. Its pages, filled with intricate drawings, cryptic symbols, and ancient text, revealed a hidden world, a world of magic and power, of rituals and spells, of a connection to nature that Eowyn had only glimpsed before. She and Kaelin spent hours poring over the book, deciphering the faded script, interpreting the complex diagrams, slowly unraveling the secrets of the winter wolf, the mysteries of the Frostborn Oath. The book spoke of a council, a gathering of beings who represented the different aspects of nature, the guardians of the balance, the protectors of Hollow's End. They were known as the Council of Shadows, and they held the key to understanding and ultimately breaking the curse of the winter spirit. According to the book, the council consisted of 5 members: the winter wolf represented by Kaelin and, now, Eowyn, the spirit of the forest represented by Alara, the whisper of the wind a being of air and shadow, the guardian of the river a creature of water and ice, and the heart of the mountain a being of earth and stone. The book described a ritual, a ceremony that needed to be performed at a specific place at a specific time, to summon the council, to seek their guidance, to petition for their help in breaking the curse. The place, Eowyn realized, was the same snow-covered clearing, the circle of standing stones, that she had seen in her vision. The time was the next full moon, which was only a few days away. "We need to find the other members of the council," Kaelin said, his voice filled with a newfound urgency. "We need their help, their power, to confront the winter spirit." Alara, who had been listening silently, nodded in agreement. "The whisper of the wind," she said, "is a reclusive being, rarely seen, rarely heard. It dwells in the highest peaks of the mountains, in the places where the wind howls the loudest. The guardian of the river," Kaelin said, "is a creature of the deep, of the frozen depths of the Hollow's End River. It is said to be a protector of the water, a guardian of its secrets. And the heart of the mountain," Alara added, "is a being of earth and stone, of the ancient caves that lie beneath Hollow's End. It is a powerful entity, a guardian of the earth's energy." Finding these beings, convincing them to join their cause, would be a daunting task. But Eowyn and Kaelin knew they had no choice. They had to try. They decided to split up, to cover more ground, to increase their chances of success. Kaelin, with his wolf senses, would seek out the whisper of the wind, venturing into the treacherous, snow-covered mountains. Eowyn, guided by the mark of the winter wolf, would search for the guardian of the river, exploring the frozen depths of the Hollow's End River. Alara, with her knowledge of the old ways, would attempt to contact the heart of the mountain, delving into the ancient caves beneath the town. Before they parted, Kaelin took Eowyn's hand, his silver eyes searching hers. "Be careful, Eowyn," he said, his voice filled with concern. "This is dangerous. We don't know what we're up against." "You too, Kaelin," Eowyn said, squeezing his hand. "We'll meet back here, at Alara's cabin, before the full moon." They embraced, a brief but heartfelt moment of connection, of reassurance, before they separated, each embarking on their own perilous journey. Eowyn, armed with the Book of Shadows and the mark of the winter wolf, returned to the frozen river, the place where her journey had begun. The ice, though still solid, seemed less menacing, less oppressive, now that she understood its origins, its connection to the winter spirit. She stood on the riverbank, closing her eyes, focusing on the mark on her hand, on the energy that flowed through her, on the connection to the water, to the ice. She felt a pull, a subtle tugging sensation, guiding her towards a specific spot on the river, a place where the ice seemed thinner, where the water flowed beneath, unseen. She carefully walked onto the ice, her steps cautious, her senses alert. She reached the spot, the place where the pull was strongest. She knelt down, placing her hand on the ice, the mark of the winter wolf tingling with a faint warmth. She spoke, her voice low and clear, a plea carried on the wind. "Guardian of the river," she said, "I seek your guidance, your help. I am Eowyn, the winter's bride, reborn. I am here to break the curse, to restore balance to Hollow's End." The ice beneath her hand began to crack, to splinter. A circle of ice, directly in front of her, melted away, revealing the dark, churning water beneath. A figure emerged from the depths, rising slowly, gracefully, its form shimmering and translucent, like water taking human shape. It was the guardian of the river, a being of pure water and ice, its eyes 2 pools of deep, blue light. It looked at Eowyn, its presence both calming and breathtaking. Chapter 10. The hunt begins under a cold moon. The guardian of the river regarded Eowyn with an ancient, knowing gaze. It did not speak in words, but communicated through images, through feelings, through a rush of understanding that flooded Eowyn's mind. She saw the history of the river, the life it sustained, the power it held, the sorrow it had witnessed. She saw the winter spirit's influence, the way it had twisted the river's natural flow, the way it had imprisoned the guardian within its icy grip. The guardian showed her a vision, a path leading beneath the ice, a hidden passage that led to a chamber deep within the frozen heart of the river. It was a place of power, a place where the veil between worlds was thin, a place where she could connect with the guardian's essence, where she could learn what she needed to know to help break the curse. "I understand," Eowyn said, her voice filled with a newfound confidence. "I will go." The guardian extended a hand, its watery fingers reaching towards her. Eowyn hesitated for a moment, her fear warring with her determination. But she knew she had to trust, she had to believe. She took the guardian's hand, and a jolt of icy energy surged through her, a feeling both shocking and invigorating. The ice beneath her feet gave way, and she plunged into the frigid water. She expected to be overwhelmed by the cold, to gasp for breath, but instead, she felt a strange sense of calm, of peace. The water around her seemed to glow with a faint, blue light, illuminating the passage that lay ahead. She swam, guided by the guardian's presence, deeper and deeper into the heart of the river. The passage was narrow and winding, the ice walls smooth and translucent, reflecting the ethereal glow. She felt the pressure increasing, the weight of the water pressing down on her, but she didn't feel fear, only a sense of purpose, of determination. Finally, she reached the chamber. It was a large, circular space, the walls lined with intricate ice formations, the ceiling a dome of shimmering frost. In the center of the chamber, a pool of water, unfrozen, glowed with an otherworldly light. The guardian of the river stood beside the pool, its form more distinct now, its features more defined. It gestured towards the pool, inviting her to enter. Eowyn stepped into the pool, the water surprisingly warm, soothing her chilled body. As she immersed herself, she felt a connection to the river, to its power, to its history. She felt the guardian's essence merging with hers, sharing its knowledge, its wisdom, its strength. She learned about the winter spirit's vulnerability, its dependence on the cold, on the fear it instilled in others. She learned about the power of the Frostborn Oath, the way it could be used to channel the energy of the earth, the energy of the river, the energy of the other members of the council, to weaken the winter spirit, to break its hold on Hollow's End. She learned about her own role, her own power, her own connection to Isolde, to the winter wolf. She was not just a reincarnation of Isolde, she was something more. She was a vessel of ancient power, a conduit of natural energy, a warrior destined to fight for the balance, for the future of Hollow's End. When she emerged from the pool, she felt transformed, renewed, empowered. She was no longer just Eowyn, the potter, the gardener, the lover of winter. She was Eowyn, the winter's bride, the winter wolf, the protector of Hollow's End. Meanwhile, Kaelin, guided by his wolf senses, ventured into the snow-covered mountains, seeking the whisper of the wind. The climb was treacherous, the slopes steep and icy, the wind howling relentlessly, whipping snowflakes into his face, making it difficult to see. He shifted into his wolf form, his senses heightened, his body adapted to the harsh conditions. He ran, leaping across crevasses, scaling icy cliffs, his paws finding purchase on the treacherous terrain. He followed the wind, its whispers guiding him, leading him higher and higher, towards the highest peaks, towards the place where the whisper of the wind resided. He finally reached a desolate plateau, a place of stark beauty and chilling isolation. The wind howled with a deafening roar, whipping snow into a frenzy, creating a whiteout that obscured everything around him. He stood there, his fur bristling, his senses alert, waiting, listening. Then he heard it. A whisper, faint at first, then growing louder, carried on the wind. It was not a human voice, but a sound, a vibration, a feeling. It was the whisper of the wind, a being of air and shadow, of movement and change. The whisper spoke to him, not in words, but in images, in sensations, in a rush of understanding that flooded his mind. He saw the power of the wind, its ability to shape the landscape, to carry messages, to connect distant places. He saw the winter spirit's influence, the way it had stifled the wind's natural flow, the way it had tried to silence its whispers. The whisper of the wind agreed to join the council, to lend its power to their cause. It showed Kaelin a path, a hidden passage that led back down the mountain, a way to avoid the worst of the storm. As the full moon began to rise, casting a cold, ethereal glow on the snow-covered landscape, Kaelin, in his human form, made his way back to Alera's cabin, his heart filled with hope, his spirit renewed. He carried with him the promise of the whisper of the wind, another ally in their fight against the winter spirit. The hunt had yielded a crucial piece, but time was running short. The mountain seemed to watch him go, the wind carrying his scent. Chapter 11. Sanctuary in the Whispering Pines. Ioan arrived back at Alera's cabin shortly after Kaelin, her clothes damp, her hair plastered to her forehead, but her eyes shining with a newfound determination. The experience in the heart of the frozen river had transformed her, strengthening her resolve, deepening her connection to the ancient magic of Hollow's End. They shared their experiences, recounting their encounters with the guardian of the river and the whisper of the wind. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly falling into place, the path to breaking the curse becoming clearer. Alera listened intently, her wise eyes filled with a mixture of hope and concern. The heart of the mountain, she said, is the most difficult to reach. It is a being of immense power, but also of great solitude. It dwells deep within the earth, in the ancient caves beneath Hollow's End, guarded by secrets and shadows. She had tried to contact the heart of the mountain, using her knowledge of the old ways, her connection to the earth's energy, but she had been unsuccessful. The winter spirit's influence, she explained, was blocking her efforts, creating a barrier between her and the ancient being. "We need to find another way," Ioan said. "We need to reach the heart of the mountain before the full moon rises completely. The ritual it has to be performed tonight." Kaelin nodded in agreement. "The Book of Shadows," he said, mentioned a hidden entrance to the caves, an opening concealed within the whispering pines. "It's a long shot, but it's our only chance." They decided to rest for a few hours, to conserve their energy, to prepare for the final and most perilous leg of their journey. Alera prepared a simple meal of bread and cheese and herbal tea, a comforting normalcy in the midst of the extraordinary circumstances. As they ate, Ioan felt a strange connection to Alera, a sense of kinship, of shared destiny. She realized that Alera was more than just a keeper of secrets, a weaver of tales. She was a mentor, a guide, a protector. "Thank you, Alera," Ioan said, her voice filled with gratitude. "For everything." Alera smiled, a faint, knowing smile. "The path you walk, my dear," she said, "is not an easy one. But you're not alone. The spirits of the forest, the whispers of the wind, the guardians of the river, the heart of the mountain, they are with you. And so am I." As the full moon began to climb higher in the sky, casting an ethereal glow on the snow-covered landscape, Ioan and Kaelin set out once more, venturing into the depths of the whispering pines. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the wind whispering secrets through the branches, the shadows dancing in the moonlight. They followed the directions in the Book of Shadows, searching for the hidden entrance to the caves. The path was treacherous, winding through dense thickets of trees, over fallen logs, across frozen streams. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, the silence broken only by the crunch of their boots on the snow and the occasional hoot of an owl. Finally, they found it, a narrow opening, concealed behind a curtain of ivy, leading into the darkness. It was a small, unassuming entrance, easily overlooked, but it held the key to their success, the key to reaching the heart of the mountain. Kaelin took Ioan's hand, his silver eyes meeting hers. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "Ready," Ioan said, her voice firm, resolute. They stepped into the darkness, the opening closing behind them, sealing them off from the outside world, plunging them into the depths of the earth. The air was cool and damp, the silence absolute, the darkness complete. They moved slowly, cautiously, their hands outstretched, feeling their way along the narrow passage. The only light came from the faint glow of the mark of the winter wolf on Eowyn's hand, a beacon in the darkness, a symbol of their hope, their connection to the ancient power. The passage twisted and turned, descending deeper and deeper into the earth. They encountered obstacles, narrow crevices, slippery rocks, underground streams, but they persevered, their determination unwavering, their bond strengthening with each step. Finally, the passage opened into a large cavern, a vast, subterranean space, the ceiling lost in the darkness, the walls lined with glittering crystals, reflecting the faint glow of Eowyn's mark. In the center of the cavern, a massive, stone figure stood, its form imposing and majestic, its presence radiating an aura of immense power. It was the heart of the mountain, a being of earth and stone, of ancient wisdom and profound silence. As they approached, the figure stirred, its eyes, 2 points of glowing amber, opening slowly, fixing their gaze on Eowyn and Kaelin. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the cavern, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. "Who dares to disturb my slumber?"
The heart of the mountain asked.
Eowyn stepped forward, her voice clear and strong, despite the tremor of fear that ran through her. "We are Eowyn and Kaelin," she said, "the Winter's bride and the Winter Wolf. We seek your help, your guidance, your power, to break the curse of the winter spirit, to restore balance to Hollow's End." The heart of the mountain remained silent for a moment, its amber eyes studying them, probing their hearts, their minds, their souls. Then, it spoke, its voice filled with a mixture of weariness and hope. "The curse it is a heavy burden, a tragedy that has spanned centuries. But it can be broken. The balance it can be restored." The ground beneath them seemed to hum, almost alive. Chapter 12. The Price of a Frostborn Oath. The heart of the mountain, after a moment of profound silence, agreed to join the Council of Shadows, to lend its power to their cause. It recognized the sincerity of their plea, the strength of their bond, the purity of their intentions. It saw the mark of the winter wolf on Eowyn's hand, the symbol of her connection to the ancient magic, the sign of her destiny. But it also warned them. The ritual to break the curse, it explained, was not without risk. It would require a sacrifice, a willingness to give up something precious, something dear, to restore the balance, to appease the winter spirit. "What kind of sacrifice?" Eowyn asked, her voice trembling slightly. She feared the answer, feared what the heart of the mountain might demand. The curse was born of love and loss, the heart of the mountain said, its voice a deep rumble that echoed through the cavern. To break it, you must be willing to offer something of equal value. Something that represents the bond you share, the love you have for each other. Eowyn and Kaelin exchanged a look, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and understanding. They knew what the heart of the mountain was implying. The sacrifice, it was their bond, their love, their future together. "There must be another way," Kaelin said, his voice filled with desperation. We won't give that up." The heart of the mountain remained silent, its amber eyes unwavering. It did not offer false hope, did not sugarcoat the truth. The price of breaking the curse was steep, the sacrifice immense. Eowyn felt a wave of despair wash over her. She had come so far, endured so much, fought so hard, only to be faced with this impossible choice. Give up her love, her future with Kaelin, or allow the curse to continue, to perpetuate the cycle of violence and sorrow. She looked at Kaelin, her heart aching with a pain she had never known before. She saw the same despair in his eyes, the same refusal to accept this cruel fate. But she also saw something else, a flicker of resolve, a spark of determination. "We will find another way," Eowyn said, her voice firm, despite the tremor in her hands. "We will not give up." We will not sacrifice our love. The heart of the mountain did not respond, did not offer any further guidance. It had spoken the truth, laid out the price, and left the choice to them. They left the cavern, the weight of the heart of the mountain's words heavy on their shoulders. They returned to Alara's cabin, the full moon now high in the sky, casting a cold, ethereal glow on the snow-covered landscape. Alara greeted them with concern, sensing the turmoil within them. They told her what the heart of the mountain had said, the sacrifice it had demanded. Alara listened silently, her wise eyes filled with sorrow. The ancient ways, she said, are often harsh, often demanding. But they're not always absolute. There is always a choice, always a path, even if it is hidden, even if it is difficult. She looked at Eowyn, her gaze filled with a knowing intensity. The power of the winter wolf, she said, is not just about strength, about magic. It is also about love, about compassion, about sacrifice. But sacrifice does not always mean loss. Sometimes it means transformation. Sometimes it means finding a new way, a better way. Her words sparked a flicker of hope within Eowyn. Transformation. A new way. A better way. Perhaps there was another path, another solution, that they hadn't considered. She remembered the Book of Shadows, the rituals and spells it contained. She remembered the vision she had seen, the snow-covered clearing, the circle of standing stones. She remembered the power she had felt flowing through her, the connection to the earth, to the river, to the wind. An idea began to form in her mind, a daring, audacious plan that might just work. It was a long shot, a gamble, but it was their only hope. I have an idea, Eowyn said, her voice filled with a newfound determination. But it's risky. It might not work. And it will require all of us, working together. She shared the kernel of her idea with Kaelin and Alara, her mind racing. Chapter 13. Betrayal in the Heart of the Storm. Eowyn's plan was audacious, bordering on reckless, but it was fueled by a desperate hope, a refusal to accept defeat. She proposed to use the combined power of the Council of Shadows, not to directly confront the winter spirit, but to reshape the curse, to transform its energy, to redirect its focus. The Book of Shadows spoke of a ritual, a ceremony of redirection, that could be used to alter the flow of magical energy, to change the terms of an ancient pact. It was a complex and dangerous ritual, requiring precise timing, perfect synchronization, and an immense amount of power. But it was their only chance to avoid the sacrifice demanded by the heart of the mountain, to save their love, their future. They gathered at the snow-covered clearing, the circle of standing stones, the place Eowyn had seen in her vision. The full moon hung high in the sky, casting an ethereal glow on the landscape, illuminating the ancient stones, creating an atmosphere of magic and mystery. Alara, representing the spirit of the forest, stood at the eastern point of the circle, her hands raised towards the sky, drawing energy from the ancient trees. Kaelin, in his wolf form, representing the winter wolf, stood at the western point, his powerful presence radiating a primal energy, a connection to the wild, untamed spirit of nature. The guardian of the river, its form shimmering and translucent, stood at the southern point, its essence merging with the frozen stream that flowed nearby. The whisper of the wind, an invisible presence, swirled around them, its energy felt in the rustling of the leaves, the whistling of the wind. Eowyn, marked by the winter wolf, stood at the center of the circle, the Book of Shadows open before her, her heart pounding in her chest. She began to chant, her voice clear and strong, reciting the ancient words, the forgotten language of the ritual. As she chanted, she felt the power flowing through her, the combined energy of the council, the ancient magic of Hollow's End. The air crackled with energy, the ground trembled beneath their feet, the standing stones seemed to hum with a life of their own. She channeled the energy, directing it towards the winter spirit, towards the curse, towards the source of the imbalance. She envisioned the curse, not as a force to be destroyed, but as a force to be transformed, to be redirected, to be healed. She felt the winter spirit's presence, its anger, its resistance, its desperate attempt to maintain its hold on Hollow's End. But the combined power of the council was too strong, the ritual too potent, the determination too fierce. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a figure shrouded in darkness, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It was the heart of the mountain, its voice, deep and resonant, filled with betrayal and rage. "You dare to defy me?" The heart of the mountain roared. "You dare to alter the ancient pact? You will pay the price for your insolence." It raised its hands, and a wave of earth and stone surged towards them, threatening to crush them, to bury them alive. Eowyn realized, with a sickening certainty, that the heart of the mountain had never intended to help them. It had been a test, a cruel deception, to lure them into a trap. Kaelin, in his wolf form, lunged at the heart of the mountain, a blur of motion, his fangs bared, his claws extended. But the heart of the mountain was too powerful, its defenses too strong. It swatted Kaelin aside, sending him crashing into a standing stone, his body slumping to the ground. Alara, the guardian of the river and the whisper of the wind, tried to intervene, but their combined power was not enough to stop the heart of the mountain's onslaught. Eowyn, her heart filled with despair, knew that they were losing. The ritual was failing. The curse was tightening its grip. The heart of the mountain was about to destroy them all. But then, she remembered Isolde, her love for Kaelin, her defiance of the winter spirit, her unwavering belief in their bond. She remembered the words of the Frostborn Oath, forever bound. She closed her eyes, focusing on her love for Kaelin, on the connection they shared, on the power that flowed between them. She reached out to him, her mind merging with his, their spirits intertwining, their love forming a shield, a barrier, against the heart of the mountain's attack. A surge of energy, white-hot and blinding, erupted from Eowyn, from the mark of the winter wolf, from the bond they shared. It was a power born of love, of sacrifice, of transformation. The heart of the mountain recoiled, its form crumbling, its voice fading into a whisper. "No, this cannot be the oath it is." Redefined. The earth stopped shaking, the air cleared, the standing stones ceased their humming. The heart of the mountain, its betrayal exposed, its power shattered, retreated into the shadows, defeated. The betrayal had almost cost them everything, and the wind seemed to carry its mournful retreat into the hills. Chapter 14. Scars of Ice and Memory. The aftermath of the confrontation with the heart of the mountain left them shaken, bruised, and emotionally drained. Kaelin, slowly shifting back to his human form, was injured, his body bearing the brunt of the heart of the mountain's attack. Eowyn rushed to his side, her heart filled with a mixture of relief and concern. "Kaelin," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Are you all right?" He winced in pain, but managed a weak smile. "I'll live," he said, his voice hoarse. "Thanks to you." Alara, the guardian of the river, and the whisper of the wind, though unharmed, were visibly shaken by the heart of the mountain's betrayal. They had trusted the ancient being, believed in its wisdom, its commitment to balance. Its treachery had shattered their faith, leaving them questioning everything they thought they knew.
"Why?"
Eowyn asked, her voice filled with confusion and anger. "Why would the heart of the mountain betray us? Why would it try to stop us from breaking the curse?" Alara sighed, her wise eyes filled with sorrow. "The heart of the mountain," she said, "was ancient, powerful, but also rigid. It clung to the old ways, to the original pact, unwilling to accept change, unwilling to embrace a new path. It feared the transformation," the guardian of the river added, its voice a soft murmur. "It feared the loss of control, the disruption of the balance, even if that balance was based on suffering and sacrifice. It was blinded by its own power," the whisper of the wind whispered, its voice a rustling of leaves. It forgot that true strength lies in adaptability, in compassion and love. They tended to Kaelin's wounds, using herbs and remedies provided by Alara. The injuries were not life-threatening, but they would take time to heal. He needed rest, time to recover his strength. Eowyn sat beside him, holding his hand, her heart aching with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. She had saved him, saved them all, but at a cost. The surge of power she had unleashed, the transformation she had undergone, had left its mark. The mark of the winter wolf on her hand had changed. It was no longer just a frost-like pattern, it was now a shimmering, silver scar, a permanent reminder of the power she had wielded, the sacrifice she had made. It was a beautiful, yet unsettling, symbol of her transformation, of her connection to the ancient magic of Hollow's End. But it wasn't just the physical scar that marked her. The experience had also left emotional scars, deep wounds that would take time to heal. She had faced betrayal, confronted death, witnessed the destructive power of fear and rigidity. She had also discovered a strength within herself she never knew she possessed, a power born of love, of sacrifice, of transformation. She had become the Winter's bride, not in the way the Winter Spirit had intended, but in her own way, on her own terms. She had redefined the oath, reshaped the curse, chosen love over fear, transformation over sacrifice. As the first rays of dawn began to paint the sky with hues of pink and gold, chasing away the last vestiges of the full moon's glow, Eowyn felt a sense of peace, of acceptance, of hope. The curse was not completely broken, the Winter Spirit was not entirely vanquished, but they had won a victory, a reprieve, a chance to rebuild, to heal, to forge a new future. "What happens now?" Kaelin asked, his voice weak, but filled with a quiet determination. Eowyn looked at him, her eyes filled with love and a newfound strength. "Now," she said, "we heal. We rebuild. We learn to live with the scars, with the memories, with the power we now possess." "And the Winter Spirit?" Eowyn smiled, a faint, knowing smile. "The Winter Spirit," she said, "is still out there, but it is weakened, diminished, its power curtailed. It will return, eventually, but we will be ready. We will be stronger. We will be together." She leaned down and kissed him, a tender, loving kiss that sealed their bond, their commitment, their future. It was a kiss that spoke of healing, of hope, of a love that had endured centuries, that had defied death, that had transformed a curse into a blessing. The lingering chill in the air was not of fear, but of the promise of a new winter, one where they held the power, not the ancient spirit. A single snowflake fell, landing delicately on Eowyn's scarred hand. Chapter 15. The Unveiling of Ancient Lore. With the immediate threat of the heart of the mountain neutralized and the ritual to reshape the curse completed, a period of uneasy calm settled over Hollow's End. The unnatural snow began to melt, albeit slowly, revealing the familiar landscape beneath. The frozen river, though still partially iced over, showed signs of thawing, the water gurgling and flowing with renewed vigor. Kaelin, under Alara's care, began to recover from his injuries. His werewolf healing abilities, combined with Alara's herbal remedies, accelerated the process, but he still needed rest and time to regain his full strength. Eowyn, while tending to Kaelin, dedicated herself to studying the Book of Shadows, delving deeper into the ancient lore, seeking a more permanent solution to the Winter Spirit's threat. The book, with its cryptic symbols and faded text, was a challenge to decipher, but Eowyn's connection to the Winter Wolf, to the ancient magic of Hollow's End, helped her to unlock its secrets. She discovered passages that spoke of the Winter Spirit's origins, its connection to the land, its motivations, its vulnerabilities. She learned that the spirit was not inherently evil, but a force of nature, a guardian of the balance, corrupted by loneliness, by isolation, by a desperate craving for connection. The book also revealed the history of the Frostborn Oath, the true meaning of the bond between the Winter Wolf and the Winter's bride. It was not a pact of servitude, but a partnership, a union of two souls, destined to protect Hollow's End, to maintain the balance between winter and spring, between darkness and light. Eowyn realized that the key to defeating the Winter Spirit, to breaking the cycle of violence and sorrow, was not to destroy it, but to heal it, to offer it the connection it craved, but in a way that did not involve sacrifice, that did not perpetuate the curse. She shared her findings with Kaelin and Alara, discussing the possibilities, exploring different approaches. They knew that the winter spirit would return, eventually, seeking to reclaim its power, to reassert its control over Hollow's End. They had to be prepared, to have a plan in place, to prevent the cycle from repeating itself. The book mentions a place, Eowyn said, a hidden sanctuary, deep within the Whispering Pines. It's said to be a place of power, a place where the veil between worlds is thin, a place where the winter spirit can be contained, but not destroyed. A prison? Kaelin asked, his voice filled with concern. We can't just lock it away, Eowyn. That's not a solution. That's just delaying the inevitable. Not a prison, Eowyn said. A sanctuary. A place where it can exist, without harming others, without being corrupted by its own loneliness. A place where it can find peace, where it can heal. Alara nodded in agreement. The ancient lore, she said, speaks of such places. Sanctuaries where spirits can be contained, not as punishment, but as protection, for themselves and for others. It's a delicate balance, a difficult task, but it is possible. They decided to search for the sanctuary, to explore the Whispering Pines, to find the place described in the Book of Shadows. It was a long shot, a gamble, but it was their best hope for a lasting solution, a way to end the winter spirit's threat without resorting to violence, without perpetuating the cycle of suffering. They waited until Kaelin had regained most of his strength, until the snow had melted sufficiently to allow them to travel safely. Then, they set out, venturing once more into the depths of the Whispering Pines, guided by the Book of Shadows, by Eowyn's intuition, by their shared determination to find a better way. The forest, though still bearing the scars of the unnatural winter, seemed to welcome them, the wind whispering secrets through the branches, the sunlight filtering through the trees, guiding their path. They followed ancient trails, long-forgotten paths, hidden passages, their senses alert, their hearts filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. They knew the forest held secrets, and they trusted it to reveal what they needed. Chapter 16. A Dance with Destiny and Despair. Their search for the sanctuary led them deep into the heart of the Whispering Pines, to a place untouched by the unnatural winter, a hidden valley where the snow had melted completely, where the trees grew tall and strong, where the air was filled with the scent of wildflowers and damp earth. It was a place of vibrant life, of thriving energy, a stark contrast to the frozen landscape they had left behind. In the center of the valley, a crystal-clear lake shimmered in the sunlight, its surface reflecting the surrounding trees, the sky above, creating a mirror image of the world around it. It was a place of breathtaking beauty, of serene tranquility, of profound peace. This is it, Eowyn said, her voice filled with awe. This is the sanctuary. As they approached the lake, they felt a presence, a gentle, welcoming energy that emanated from the water, from the trees, from the very air itself. It was the spirit of the sanctuary, a guardian of this hidden place, a protector of its balance, its harmony. The spirit did not manifest in a physical form, but communicated through feelings, through images, through a rush of understanding that flooded Eowyn's mind. She saw the history of the sanctuary, its purpose, its power, its connection to the winter spirit. She learned that the sanctuary was not just a place of containment, but a place of healing, a place of transformation. It was a place where the winter spirit could be released from its loneliness, from its anger, from its destructive impulses. It was a place where it could find peace, where it could reconnect with the natural world, where it could rediscover its true purpose. But the spirit of the sanctuary also warned them. The process of bringing the winter spirit to this place, of containing it within the sanctuary, would not be easy. It would require a delicate dance, a careful balance of power and compassion, of strength and understanding. The winter spirit, weakened but not defeated, would resist, would fight, would try to escape. They had to be prepared, to be united, to be strong. They had to offer it a choice, a chance to heal, a chance to change. We understand, Eowyn said, her voice firm, resolute. We are ready. They spent several days in the sanctuary, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. They studied the Book of Shadows, learning the rituals, the spells, the incantations that would be needed to contain the winter spirit, to guide it to this place of peace. They practiced honing their skills, strengthening their bond, preparing themselves mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for the challenge ahead. They drew energy from the sanctuary, from the lake, from the trees, from the earth itself, building up their reserves, fortifying their defenses. Then, one evening, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, they felt it. The winter spirit's presence, a chilling wind that swept through the trees, a sudden drop in temperature, a sense of foreboding that settled heavily in their hearts. It had returned. Eowyn and Kaelin stood together, hand in hand, facing the approaching storm. The wind howled around them, whipping snowflakes into their faces, creating a swirling vortex of ice and snow. The winter spirit emerged from the storm, its form shimmering and translucent, its eyes burning with a cold, malevolent light. It was weaker than before, its power diminished, but it was still a formidable force, a being of ancient magic and primal rage. "You cannot escape your fate," the winter spirit hissed, its voice a chilling rasp that echoed through the valley. "The bride will be mine. The curse will be fulfilled." "The curse is broken," Eowyn said, her voice clear and strong, despite the tremor of fear that ran through her. "The oath is redefined. We offer you a choice, a chance to heal, a chance to find peace." She gestured towards the lake, towards the sanctuary. "This is your new home," she said. "A place where you can exist, without harming others, without being consumed by your own loneliness. A place where you can be free." The winter spirit hesitated, its icy form flickering, its gaze shifting from Eowyn to Kaelin, to the lake, to the surrounding trees. It felt the pull of the sanctuary, the gentle, welcoming energy that emanated from it. But it also felt the fear, the anger, the resentment that had consumed it for centuries. A battle waged inside it, and the valley held its breath. Chapter 17. The Gathering of the Fated Few. The winter spirit's internal struggle manifested as a violent storm that raged around them. The wind howled with a deafening roar, whipping snow and ice into a frenzy, creating a blinding whiteout. The trees swayed violently, their branches creaking and groaning under the strain. The lake churned, its surface a maelstrom of icy waves. Eowyn and Kaelin stood firm, their hands clasped tightly, their bodies braced against the onslaught. They knew that they had to remain united, to maintain their focus, to offer the winter spirit a beacon of hope, a path to peace. "We understand your pain," Eowyn said, her voice amplified by the magic of the sanctuary, reaching the winter spirit through the chaos of the storm. "We know your loneliness, your isolation, your anger. But you don't have to be alone anymore. You don't have to suffer anymore. We offer you a choice," Kaelin added, his voice firm and resolute, echoing Eowyn's words. "Embrace the sanctuary. Embrace peace. Embrace a new beginning." The winter spirit wavered, its form flickering erratically, its icy eyes darting between Eowyn and Kaelin, its internal conflict raging. It was torn between its desire for revenge, its craving for power, and the faint glimmer of hope that they offered, the promise of healing, of release. Suddenly, from the surrounding forest, figures began to emerge. Alara, representing the spirit of the forest, stepped forward, her presence radiating a calm, grounding energy. The guardian of the river, its form shimmering and translucent, rose from the lake, its essence merging with the water, creating a protective barrier around Eowyn and Kaelin. The whisper of the wind, an invisible force, swirled around them, its energy disrupting the winter spirit storm, creating pockets of calm within the chaos. They had come. The Council of Shadows, united once more, ready to support Eowyn and Kaelin, ready to help the winter spirit find its way. Their combined presence, their shared intention, created a powerful force, a beacon of hope that pierced through the winter spirit's darkness. The winter spirit, overwhelmed by the combined power of the council, by the unwavering compassion of Eowyn and Kaelin, began to weaken. Its form flickered more violently, its icy eyes losing their malevolent glow, its voice fading into a whisper. "I don't know," the winter spirit murmured, its voice filled with confusion and fear. "I can't." Eowyn stepped forward, her hand outstretched, offering the winter spirit a connection, a bridge, a path to the sanctuary. "It's all right," she said, her voice gentle and soothing. "Let go of your anger, your fear, your pain. Embrace the peace that awaits you. Embrace the healing that is possible." The winter spirit hesitated for a moment longer, its form trembling, its essence fluctuating. Then, slowly, tentatively, it reached out, its icy fingers brushing against Eowyn's hand. A jolt of energy, cold but not painful, passed between them. The storm began to subside, the wind dying down, the snow ceasing to fall, the lake calming, the trees returning to stillness. The winter spirit's form began to dissolve, its icy essence flowing towards the lake, towards the heart of the sanctuary. It was not a defeat, but a surrender. Not an ending, but a transformation. As the last vestiges of the winter spirit merged with the lake, a wave of peace washed over the valley. The air cleared, the sky brightened, the sun shone through the clouds, casting a warm, golden glow on the landscape. The winter spirit was gone, but its essence remained, transformed, healed, integrated into the sanctuary, becoming a part of its balance, its harmony. The curse was truly broken, the cycle of violence and sorrow ended. The gathering stood, silent for a moment, letting the renewed peace fill the space where the ancient power had raged. Chapter 18. Beneath the frozen waterfall's veil. The immediate aftermath of the winter spirit's transformation brought a palpable sense of relief, a collective exhale that seemed to ripple through the valley, through Hollow's End, through the very fabric of their lives. The sanctuary, now imbued with the winter spirit's essence, radiated a gentle, soothing energy, a promise of lasting peace. Eowyn and Kaelin, exhausted but exhilarated, stood hand in hand, gazing at the tranquil lake, feeling the weight of their accomplishment, the profound shift in the balance of power. They had done it. They had broken the curse, healed the winter spirit, forged a new path, a new future. Alara, the guardian of the river, and the whisper of the wind, approached them, their expressions filled with gratitude and respect. They had witnessed a miracle, a testament to the power of love, of compassion, of transformation. "You have done what many thought impossible," Alara said, her voice filled with awe. "You have brought peace to Hollow's End, balance to the seasons, healing to a wounded spirit. We couldn't have done it without you," Eowyn said, her voice filled with gratitude. "Your guidance, your support, your power were essential." It was a collective effort, the guardian of the river murmured, its voice a gentle ripple of water. A testament to the strength of unity, the power of connection. "The wind will carry the tale," the whisper of the wind whispered, its voice a rustling of leaves. The story of the winter's bride and the winter wolf, who broke the curse, who brought peace to the land. They spent a few days in the sanctuary, resting, recovering, allowing themselves to fully absorb the magnitude of what they had accomplished. They explored the valley, discovering hidden waterfalls, secret groves, ancient trees, feeling the vibrant energy of the land, the healing power of the sanctuary. Kaelin, fully recovered from his injuries, seemed to have found a new sense of purpose, a renewed commitment to protecting Hollow's End, to maintaining the balance they had fought so hard to achieve. Eowyn, marked by the shimmering silver scar of the winter wolf, felt a deeper connection to the land, to the ancient magic, to her own power. She had embraced her destiny, not as a victim of a curse, but as a guardian of balance, a protector of peace. One day, as they were exploring a hidden corner of the valley, they discovered a waterfall, cascading down a cliff face, its water crystal clear, its spray creating a shimmering mist. Behind the waterfall, they saw a faint glimmer, a subtle hint of something hidden. What do you think it is? Kalen asked, his curiosity piqued. I don't know, Eowyn said, her intuition tingling. But I have a feeling we should find out. They carefully made their way behind the waterfall, the water crashing around them, the mist soaking their clothes. They found a small cave, hidden behind the veil of water, its entrance concealed from view. Inside the cave, they discovered a collection of ancient artifacts, objects of power, relics of a forgotten past. There were crystals, amulets, scrolls, carvings, all imbued with the energy of the sanctuary, the essence of the winter spirit. Among the artifacts, they found a small, silver box, intricately engraved with images of snowflakes and wolves. It was strikingly similar to the box Eowyn had found in her attic, the box that had contained Isolde's journal, the silver ring, the dried snowdrop. Eowyn carefully opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single object, a pendant, shaped like a teardrop, made of a shimmering, translucent material that seemed to capture the light, to hold it within its depths. As Eowyn picked up the pendant, she felt a surge of energy, a connection to the winter spirit, not the malevolent force they had confronted, but the healed, transformed essence that now resided within the sanctuary. She understood. The pendant was a key, a conduit, a way to communicate with the winter spirit, to maintain the connection, to ensure the lasting peace of Hollow's End. It was a gift, a responsibility, a symbol of their accomplishment, their transformation. The pendant was cool to the touch, but warmed quickly, sensing her. Chapter 19. The Reckoning of Lost Souls. With the discovery of the teardrop pendant, Eowyn and Kalen felt a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of their roles as guardians of Hollow's End. They knew that the peace they had achieved was fragile, that it required constant vigilance, constant nurturing, constant connection to the land, to the sanctuary, to the winter spirit. They decided to return to Hollow's End, to share their story, to reassure the townspeople, to begin the process of rebuilding, of healing, of forging a new future, a future free from the shadow of the curse. As they emerged from the Whispering Pines, they were greeted by a sight that filled them with both joy and relief. The snow had completely melted, the river was flowing freely, the trees were budding with new life, the air was filled with the songs of birds, the scent of wildflowers. Hollow's End, though bearing the scars of the unnatural winter, was slowly coming back to life. The townspeople, initially fearful and withdrawn, began to emerge from their homes, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity and hope. Eowyn and Kalen, accompanied by Alara, gathered the townspeople in the town square, sharing their story, explaining what had happened, revealing the truth about the winter spirit, the curse, the sanctuary. The townspeople listened intently, their initial skepticism gradually giving way to awe, to understanding, to gratitude. They had lived under the shadow of the curse for generations, fearing the winter, fearing the unknown. Now they finally understood, finally felt a sense of hope, a sense of liberation. There were, of course, some who remained skeptical, who clung to the old fears, the old beliefs. But the majority of the townspeople embraced the new reality, the new possibilities, the new future that Eowyn and Kalen had forged. They began the process of rebuilding, of healing, of restoring Hollow's End to its former glory and beyond. They repaired the damaged homes, cleared the debris, planted new trees, cultivated new gardens, creating a vibrant, thriving community, a testament to their resilience, their determination, their unity. Eowyn and Kalen, now recognized as the guardians of Hollow's End, took on new roles, new responsibilities. They became teachers, mentors, guides, sharing their knowledge, their wisdom, their power with the townspeople, helping them to connect with the land, to understand the ancient magic, to embrace their own potential. They established a new council, a gathering of representatives from the town, to work together, to make decisions, to ensure the continued peace and prosperity of Hollow's End. They honored the old ways, the ancient traditions, but they also embraced change, innovation, progress, creating a harmonious blend of the past and the future. But there was one final task that remained, one final reckoning that needed to be addressed. The souls of those who had been lost to the curse, those who had perished during the unnatural winters, those who had suffered under the winter spirit's wrath, they still lingered, trapped between worlds, unable to find peace. Eowyn, using the teardrop pendant, connected with the winter spirit, now a gentle, benevolent presence within the sanctuary. She asked for its help, its guidance, in releasing the lost souls, in guiding them to their final resting place. The winter spirit agreed, its essence flowing through the pendant, empowering Eowyn, guiding her, showing her the way. Together, Eowyn and Kaelin, accompanied by Alara and the members of the new council, performed a ceremony, a ritual of release, a gathering of remembrance, at the frozen riverbank, the place where their journey had begun. They spoke the names of the lost souls, honoring their memories, acknowledging their suffering, offering them forgiveness, offering them peace. They chanted ancient words, sang forgotten songs, performed sacred dances, creating a vortex of energy, a bridge between worlds. As the ceremony reached its climax, a shimmering light appeared above the river, a gateway to the other side, a path to the final resting place. The lost souls, one by one, began to emerge, their forms ethereal and translucent, their faces filled with a mixture of sorrow and relief. They passed through the gateway, guided by the winter spirit's gentle essence, released from their earthly bonds, finding peace at last. The town watched in silence, and then, as one, they cheered, a moment of communal catharsis. Chapter 20. The Final Confrontation of Hearts. With the release of the lost souls, the final threads of the curse unraveled, the last vestiges of the winter spirit's darkness dissipated. Hollow's End was truly free, healed, reborn. The peace that settled over the valley was not just the absence of conflict, but of vibrant, thriving energy, a sense of unity, of purpose, of hope. Eowyn and Kaelin, their roles as guardians of Hollow's End firmly established, found themselves at a crossroads. They had faced death, defied destiny, transformed a curse into a blessing. But what now? What was their future, their purpose, beyond the immediate tasks of rebuilding and healing? They returned to the sanctuary, to the crystal-clear lake, to the place where the winter spirit, now a benevolent essence, resided. They sought guidance, clarity, a deeper understanding of their own intertwined destinies. As they stood by the lake, hand in hand, gazing at the shimmering water, the winter spirit communicated with them, not through words, but through feelings, through images, through a rush of understanding that flooded their minds. They saw their past lives, their connection as Isolde and Kaelin, their love, their sacrifice, their unwavering commitment to each other, to Hollow's End. They saw the centuries of struggle, the pain, the loss, the repeated attempts to break the curse, to find peace. They also saw their future, a future filled with possibilities, with challenges, with opportunities. They saw themselves as teachers, mentors, guides, sharing their knowledge, their wisdom, their power with others, helping them to connect with the land, to embrace their own potential. They saw themselves as protectors, guardians, not just of Hollow's End, but of the balance between the human world and the natural world, between the seen and the unseen. They saw themselves as partners, lovers, soulmates, their bond stronger than ever, their love a beacon of hope, a source of strength. But they also saw a choice, a decision they had to make. They could remain in Hollow's End, continuing their work as guardians, as leaders, as protectors. Or they could venture out into the world, sharing their knowledge, their wisdom, their power with others, helping to heal the wounds of the past, to prevent future curses, to create a more balanced, more harmonious world. The choice was not easy. They loved Hollow's End, the community they had helped to rebuild, the sanctuary they had discovered, the peace they had achieved. But they also felt a calling, a pull, a sense of responsibility to share their gifts, to make a difference beyond the confines of their valley. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with love, with understanding, with a shared sense of purpose. They didn't need words to communicate their decision. They knew, deep in their hearts, what they had to do. "We'll go," Eowyn said, her voice firm, resolute. "We'll share our knowledge, our wisdom, our power with the world. We'll help others to break their curses, to find their peace, to embrace their destinies. But we'll always return," Kaelin added, his voice filled with a quiet strength. "Hollow's End will always be our home, our sanctuary, the place where our hearts reside." They spent a few more weeks in Hollow's End, preparing for their journey, saying goodbye to their friends, their family, their community. They entrusted the care of Hollow's End to the new council, to Alara, to the guardians of the river and the wind, confident that the town was in good hands, that the peace they had achieved would endure. Then, one crisp autumn morning, as the leaves were turning golden and the air was filled with the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves, they set out, hand in hand, venturing beyond the whispering pines, beyond the familiar valley, into the unknown. They carried with them the teardrop pendant, the symbol of their connection to the winter spirit, the key to maintaining the balance, the reminder of their journey, their transformation. They carried with them the knowledge, the wisdom, the power they had gained, the lessons they had learned, the love they shared. They faced the future with courage, with hope, with a deep sense of purpose, ready to embrace whatever challenges, whatever opportunities lay ahead. They were the winter's bride and the winter wolf, forever bound, forever committed to each other, to the balance of the world, to the healing of the earth. Their final confrontation was not one of violence or fear, but one of choice, of self-discovery, and choosing a future together, no matter where it led. The sun set on their backs, lighting their path forward. Epilogue. Years turned into decades. Eowyn and Kaelin traveled far and wide, their names whispered in legends, their deeds echoing in the stories of those they helped. They became known as the healers, the wanderers, the bringers of balance. They encountered other curses, other spirits, other challenges, always facing them with courage, with compassion, with the unwavering strength of their bond. They never forgot Hollow's End, returning often to the sanctuary, to the crystal-clear lake, to the place where their journey had begun. They watched as the town thrived, as the community flourished, as the peace they had achieved endured, passed down through generations. Alara, though ancient, remained a steadfast presence, a wise mentor, a guiding light for the people of Hollow's End. The guardian of the river and the whisper of the wind continued their silent watch, protecting the valley, maintaining the balance of nature. The teardrop pendant, passed down through Eowyn and Kaelin's lineage, became a symbol of hope, a reminder of the power of love, of sacrifice, of transformation. It served as a connection to the winter spirit, now a benevolent essence, a guardian of the sanctuary, a source of peace and healing. Eowyn and Kaelin, though aged by time, remained as vibrant, as passionate, as committed to each other as they had been on that fateful day when they first met on the frozen riverbank. Their love, tested by time, by challenges, by destiny, had only grown stronger, deeper, more profound. One winter evening, as the snow fell softly outside, blanketing Hollow's End in a pristine layer of white, Eowyn and Kaelin sat by the fireplace in their old Victorian house, the same house where their journey had begun. They were surrounded by their descendants, their family, their friends, their community. Eowyn, her hair now completely silver, her eyes still sparkling with the wisdom of ages, held Kaelin's hand, his touch still sending a familiar warmth through her. They looked at each other, their hearts filled with a love that had transcended time, that had defied death, that had transformed a curse into a blessing. "We did it, my love," Eowyn whispered, her voice filled with a quiet joy. "We broke the curse. We found our peace. We lived our destiny." Kaelin smiled, his silver eyes reflecting the firelight, his love for Eowyn shining brighter than ever. "We did it together," he said, his voice a gentle rumble. "Forever bound." As the evening drew to a close, Eowyn and Kaelin, hand in hand, walked out into the snow-covered garden. They stood beneath the ancient oak tree, the same tree that had witnessed their first meeting, their first kiss, their first vow. They looked up at the starry sky, at the winter moon, at the beauty of the world around them. They felt the presence of the winter spirit, a gentle, benevolent energy that embraced them, that thanked them, that blessed them. They closed their eyes, their spirits merging, their love transcending the boundaries of the physical world. They became one with the sanctuary, with the land, with the universe, their journey complete, their destiny fulfilled. Their forms shimmered, fading slowly, becoming part of the winter landscape, their love a lasting legacy, a whisper on the wind, a story told for generations to come. The snow fell, soft and silent, covering them in a blanket of peace, a final, eternal embrace. The house stood silent, watching the place where they stood, the story complete. The end.